Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater SoundCheck. This time out, the brand new Pro Tools Dock control surface. Let's get started. Today we're checking out Pro Tools Dock from Avid. Pro Tools Dock is a control surface that allows you to get hands-on with Yukon-compatible apps that are running in your computer. Pro Tools, Logic, Nuendo, Cubase, a variety of different apps support Yukon, and you can access the features of those using the Pro Tools Dock. Pro Tools Dock works in conjunction with the free Pro Tools Control app that runs on an iPad. In this case, I've got an iPad Air 2. We've checked out the Pro Tools Control app before in an iOS update video, but some great new features have been added, so let's take a quick tour of the app before we dive into the Pro Tools Dock. There are four basic screens in Pro Tools Control. We begin with the mixer screen. Now this gives us access to faders and all the mix controls. So if we switch over to the mix view in Pro Tools, and we have our faders here, we can scroll through the channels. Pro Tools will follow right along. We can move a fader here. It moves inside of Pro Tools. We can access automation. Close that back up. We can solo tracks. We can mute tracks. Down at the bottom here, we have 12 soft keys, and those allow us to access a variety of different features inside Pro Tools, or we can actually change this so that we have a transport view. Now keep in mind, we can run the Pro Tools Control app with our iPad wirelessly connected to the computer, so we don't have to have the Pro Tools Dock to use these features. But when you integrate it with the Pro Tools Dock, things get even better. Another nice feature of the Pro Tools Control app is that you can see the meters moving, so you can check out your levels while you're working. This is great when you're using an iPad with Pro Tools Control for remote controlling Pro Tools. Say you're tracking in another room from where your Pro Tools rig is, because you can see the meters and actually check out what's happening with your levels as you're working. Our second screen in Pro Tools Control is the track screen, and this operates in a similar fashion to the large format S6 control surface from Avid. So if we change over to that, the first thing you'll see is that our tracks are now arrayed as a matrix here, and we can scroll through those tracks. Again, Pro Tools will follow along. You can still see your meters are operating, and depending on which button you have selected here at the bottom of the screen, you can access different parameters as well. So for example, I have solo selected, so if I touch a track, it will be soloed. If I switch over to operating mute, I can mute a track. Go back, we can unsolo those tracks. We can unmute the tracks. So you can quickly access solo, mute, record, enable, input settings right from this page. And at the bottom of the page, we still have our transport controls, so we can stop playback, or we can shift over and access our soft keys. Our next view in Pro Tools Control is the channel page, and this is a brand new feature in Pro Tools Control. So if we select that, we're basically looking at all the parameters for a single channel in Pro Tools. Now we can scroll through those channels using the universe bar here at the top. So as we move across, we can see all our different channels. Pro Tools follows right along. And if we've color-coded our tracks, we can easily zoom in on exactly what we want and then select that. So let's go back over here. I've got Boom here. We can look at the inserts for that channel. So if we open up Boom, the plugin opens up right on Pro Tools, and now we have access to the different parameters here as well. So we can adjust the volume. We can move through different sets of parameters. And in fact, there's another page of parameters here as well. So all of those are instantly accessible to us. We can do the same thing with our inputs. We can open up our dynamics processors and look at the plugins. We can look at our EQs, sends, pan. We actually have a surround panner here, so if you're working in surround and you want to get hands-on with that panning, you can do that from here in the channel page. We can also look at our groups, and finally we have our mix output. Working with plugins in Pro Tools Controls is super fast and easy. So let's go back to Dynamic here. If we double tap, our favorite dynamics processor will open up right away in Pro Tools. You saw how fast that was, and now we can access all of the parameters here as well. Because we're in the Pro Tools Dock, we can of course also access those using the knobs here right on the Pro Tools Dock, but they're available on the screen in Pro Tools Control. Inserting additional plugins is equally easy. Simply go over here to Inserts, choose Config, and now we can choose our next available insert, C. We can choose multi-channel plugins, choose an EQ plugin. We'll select the top one, which is a McDSP 4020. Now we come out of Config, it opens up right in Pro Tools, and again we have access to all of the parameters. Very fast, very easy, and it's very comfortable to get hands-on with Pro Tools in this way. You can work right here on the iPad and everything follows right along on your computer. It's great if you're remote controlling from a different location from where your Pro Tools rig is set up. Our final page in Pro Tools Control is another new page, and that's soft keys. When we switch to this, we have access to any of the key commands inside of Pro Tools. They can be assigned right here in the soft keys, and you can also access 500 different Yukon control commands. This allows you to set up Pro Tools Control to give you immediate access to the commands that you use all the time. They're just a button press away. You can also access all of the commands inside of Pro Tools, as I mentioned. So if we hit the menu control here, we can see here are all of our Pro Tools menus. So we have the File menu, for example. We can access all of the commands there. So it's a very fast way to navigate around Pro Tools and access the commands that you want. You can even create your own user pages and group the commands that you use all the time in one place. The Pro Tools Control app is so cool as a Wi-Fi enabled remote control for whatever Yukon enabled app you're using. Once you start using it, you wonder how you ever got along without it. But when you pair it up with the Pro Tools dock, things get even better. You really have the best of both worlds. It's a hybrid solution, if you will, because you have the graphic display here that's so great on the iPad. You have all the gestural control that's so easy to use. And then when it comes time to work with your audio, you have real knobs, real buttons, real faders, and real transport controls here that let you really get hands-on. So you can use both of them together in that hybrid situation to get the most out of Pro Tools and to operate very, very quickly. With Pro Tools Dock, we have fast access to a variety of hands-on controls. For example, we have 8 rotary encoders here, 8 knobs, and each of those is also a switch when you press that. We have a single fader that follows whatever track is selected here in Pro Tools. We have full-time transport controls here, and with the shift control, we can access additional commands for those. We also have 2 banks of switches here that by default have a variety of different tasks assigned to those, but you can use or assign those to whatever you want. Next up, we have a jog shuttle wheel right here in the center, and as we'll see, that can be assigned to a variety of different things. We also have touch strips, 2 of those, one here, and each of those has 4 sections that can be assigned to different commands. We have dedicated solo and mute buttons, as well as a dedicated track select and a record button here. Rounding things out, at the top of the Pro Tools dock, we have 12 soft buttons here that correspond to the different selections at the bottom of the Pro Tools Control app, and we also have buttons for navigating the app. So let's take a look at how all this works. We're working with the app, so if we just select a channel, we can either scroll to it here or we can select it using the button, and now we have access with the fader over that. We can also solo. You can mute right here on the front panel. We have control over playback. We can stop. Of course, we can rewind. If we use the shift key, we can back and play, which jumps us back by a user-definable amount. So if you're listening, you hear a problem in a mix, you can hit that button, it'll jump you back 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars, whatever you set it up for. It's a very fast way to quality control or quality check your mixes. We have a loop control or loop record switch, as well as a record enable button, so we can instantly jump into recording. Now those touch switches can be assigned to a variety of different things. In this case, for example, I've got the shift, touch, set up to take me between the mix window and the edit window. Other selections, this opens up the memory locations. This one opens up our system usage, and number 2 closes all the open windows. As I mentioned, we have 2 banks of buttons here, and those can be assigned to a variety of different things. By default, for example, we've got scroll horizontal here. When we hit that, turn the green light on, now our jog shuttle wheel allows us to zoom in and out horizontally on our tracks. We can combine that with the shift key. We hit that, and now we can scroll through our session. We can also use the zoom vertical button in conjunction with the shift key and the jog shuttle wheel to zoom in vertically on a track. So if we turn off our zoom here, select zoom vertical, whatever our selected track is, we'll zoom in vertically. We could also assign the jog shuttle wheel, for example, to control clip gain, so we could turn that up and down using the jog shuttle wheel. So all kinds of different parameter controls can be assigned to that wheel using these different buttons here. Of course, you can use the Pro Tools dock for setting up punch-ins. It's awesome if you're working by yourself because you can quickly reach up and control what's happening inside of Pro Tools, much easier than trying to get to your mouse or trying to get to a trackpad here on a laptop and control things like punch-in, punch-out when you're playing yourself. So having this for that type of control purpose is really ideal. And if you are doing a lot of punching, you'll definitely want to use the foot switch jack on the back for controlling punch-in and punch-out. In my mind, one of the best things about Pro Tools Control is how it allows you to have precise control over what's happening inside your plugins and your instruments. Now you do that by, again, using this hybrid approach. So if we switch over to the channel, we choose our inserts, we choose, for example, our EQ plugin, and now using these knobs, we have very precise control over what's happening, and if we hit the switch, it'll go to its default setting. This is so much easier than using a mouse or trying to use a trackpad to adjust settings inside of Pro Tools. One of the things that really stands out for me with Pro Tools Dock is that it feels like a high-end control surface. The buttons are very solid, the knobs operate very smoothly, the jog shuttle wheel has a nice weight to it. It's basically the same quality as you get with the S6 control surface, which is a very high-end control surface from Avid for working with Pro Tools or other Yukon apps. What we've looked at here is a very basic configuration for using Pro Tools Dock and Pro Tools Control with Pro Tools. We've got a MacBook Pro that's running Pro Tools, I've got an iPad Air 2 and that has the Pro Tools Control app, I've got Pro Tools Dock, and rounding out our rig we have a Pro Tools Quartet which is serving as our audio interface. Now this system works great, but if we really want to get hands-on we can enhance the capabilities by adding an Artist Mix control surface, or we could really trick it out by adding an S3 control surface. So what we've done here is we've added a couple of artist mixes to the rig that we were showing you before. We now have 16 additional faders, we have 16 different rotary controls, all the different controls that the artist mix offers. But when you combine that with Pro Tools Control on an iPad and the Pro Tools Dock, you get even more functionality. Now we could add a single artist mix, or we could actually add up to 4 of these, which would give us 32 additional faders, and then we have the single fader that's also here in our Pro Tools Dock, so we can have hands-on control over 33 different channels simultaneously. Layouts allow you to assign exactly the channels you want on the faders here on your artist mixes. So let's take a look at how this works. We can access layouts in 2 different ways using Pro Tools Control. First of all, we can go to the Soft Keys page. Hit Soft Keys. Now if we select Layouts, our different layouts are arrayed here right on the screen. So we can choose all channels, just our drums. I've also created one that has the guitar here on the left. We've got vocal, which has our vocal as well as its effects. So you can instantly jump to whatever combination of tracks you've assigned to the layout and get to work immediately. This allows you to switch very quickly between groups of tracks as well. So we can go from all tracks to just the vocal, to the drums, to the guitar, or in fact we can access VCAs. We can also access layouts here at the top of the screen. If we touch what says VCAs here, we can either turn off different types of track types from our view, or if we go to layouts, we have our different layouts here. So here's all our tracks, here's our guitar, vocals, or our VCA tracks. Having layouts available with the Artist Mix is a big jump forward because you can now instantly access groups of tracks and work on them very quickly. For our final example today, we've integrated an S3 control surface along with the Pro Tools Dock and our iPad and Pro Tools running on the MacBook Pro. Now this greatly expands our control capabilities. The S3 gives us 16 additional channels here. We have 16 faders. We also have 2 rows of displays as well as 2 rows of encoders and controls, so we can access the parameters for plugins, for instruments. We can be working on those while we're also working on mixing, and we can integrate that with what's happening here with the Pro Tools Dock and what's happening in Pro Tools Control. As with the Artist Mix, we have access to layouts here. Now we can access those using Pro Tools Control as we saw before, or in fact we have assignable buttons here. There are assignable buttons all over the S3, and in this case I've got my layouts here. Here's all my tracks, here's my drum tracks, here's guitar, vocals, and here's our VCA. But the S3 allows us to go a step further because we can do what's called VCA Spill, where we unpack the tracks that are being controlled by this fader and array them across the S3. We do that by double-clicking the Select button. So now these are the tracks that are being controlled by the VCA, and the VCA is actually over here on our Pro Tools Dock. All of these enhancements make the workflow when you're working with Pro Tools or another Yukon-enabled app even smoother and even faster. So you can really get to work with your hands on the mix using the Pro Tools Dock. If you've got a control surface using Pro Tools Control, you can do so much here without ever having to access the computer. It's a very streamlined way of working. As we've seen today, there are a variety of different ways to get your hands onto Pro Tools. You can use the individual control surfaces, or you can integrate them all together into a system. We can work with just an iPad running Pro Tools Control connected by Wi-Fi, or in fact we can hardwire that as well for even faster communication. Add the Pro Tools Dock for hands-on control over so many different parameters and for interacting with Pro Tools Control, and then add a control surface, whether it's an Artist Mix or an S3, to really get hands-on with your mixing. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater SoundCheck. I'm Mitch Gallagher.